The sun rose like a blade of fire over the Texas horizon, cutting through the mist that lay heavy over the broken fences and dying grass of the frontier. Crows circled overhead, their cries echoing across the empty prairie, while the old man walked slowly down the dirt road with a limp in his left leg and a rusted canteen swinging from his belt. His name was Silas Boone, once a respected cattleman, now the town's favorite joke. His clothes were tattered, his hat slouched low to hide eyes that had seen too much, and his boots were cracked from years of wandering from ranch to ranch, asking for work that no one would give him anymore. That old fool's still alive? The young hands would laugh as he passed the saloon. He's probably chasing ghosts, not cows. Silas never said a word back. He'd just nod, spit into the dust and keep walking. He'd seen the frontier change, seen railroads tear through the land, seen greedy men buy and sell what was once wild and free. And though he looked beaten, there was something in his step that refused to die. One morning, the laughter grew louder. The Boone Ranch, his family's once proud spread, was about to be auctioned off for $1. Silas had lost it years ago when his son went missing during a cattle drive and his wife followed him to the grave from heartbreak. Rumors said the land was cursed, that anyone who tried to run cattle there ended up broke, drunk, or dead. Folks said Silas had lost his mind when he claimed the land still held something worth more than gold. So when the auction was announced, the whole town gathered, eager to watch the final humiliation of a man they'd already buried in their minds. Even Sheriff Mac Graw, a man who once rode beside Silas in the Apache Wars, shook his head and muttered, "Should have died with his boots on instead of going out like this." The auctioneer, a slick man with a voice that carried like a whip, stood on the porch of the old Boone Ranch house and waved his ledger. $1. "Folks, that's the starting bid for this fine piece of cursed land," he said with a sneer. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Anyone brave or foolish enough to start us off? For a long moment, silence. Then, from the back of the crowd, a young rancher named Luke Carson stepped forward. He was new in town, a man who'd built his name on hard work and fair dealing. $1, he said simply. The crowd erupted in laughter again. "Luke, you just bought yourself a ghost story," one man shouted. But Luke's eyes weren't on them. They were on Silas, who stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, head bowed. After the papers were signed, Luke approached the old man. "Mr. Boone," he said, handing him the $1 coin, "I reckon this belongs to you, but I'd like to know why everyone's afraid of this place." Silas took the coin and stared at it for a long while, as if weighing the worth of the young man's soul. "You just bought the truth, son," he said finally. "Come with me." They walked across the field, where dry grass whispered secrets of forgotten times. Silas led him to a broken-down barn at the edge of a dry creek. Inside, dust motes danced in the light that streamed through the cracked roof. The old man knelt beside a loose floorboard and pried it up with his weathered hands. Beneath it lay a small wooden chest, its lock rusted shut. He broke it open with a rock. Inside were old maps, letters, and a few faded photographs. Luke picked one up. It showed Silas's son standing beside a herd of cattle branded with an unfamiliar mark. "What's this?" Luke asked. Silas's eyes hardened. "That's the mark of the Miss Graw family," he said quietly. "The same sheriff who laughed at me today. My boy found proof that Graw and his men were rustling cattle and selling them across the border. When he tried to expose them, they made sure he never came home. I buried my wife with a broken heart, but I never buried my truth." Luke felt a chill crawl down his spine. "And now, he whispered. Silas closed the chest, his hands trembling. "Now you own the land that holds their secret. You'll find the rest when the sun sets behind that hill." He pointed toward the west, where the sky bled red like old wounds. As Luke left the barn, he turned back to see Silas standing in the doorway, the wind tugging at his coat. For a moment, the old man looked like he'd stepped out of time, one last remnant of a dying world that still had stories left to tell. And though the town still laughed that evening, their laughter carried a nervous edge, as if somewhere deep down they knew the joke might soon be on them. Night fell like ink poured over the prairie. The moon rose, casting a silver glow on the Boone Ranch, As Luke stood near the old windmill, the letter Silas had given him clutched in his hand. The letter was dated 20 years earlier and written in shaky, hurried script. "If you're reading this," it began, "I was right about MacGraw and his men. They killed my boy, and I've buried the proof deep beneath the roots of the old cottonwood tree." The letter ended abruptly, as though Silas's son had been interrupted before he could finish. Luke turned toward the cottonwood, a lonely silhouette against the horizon. He grabbed a lantern and began to dig. Each stroke of the shovel bit deep into the earth, stirring ghosts of the past. Sweat stung his eyes, and the wind whispered through the grass like the voice of the lost. Then, with a dull clink, his shovel hit something solid. He knelt down and brushed away the dirt to reveal a metal box sealed with wax. Inside were ledgers, contracts, and wanted posters, evidence of cattle theft, bribery, and murder, all bearing the signature of Sheriff MacGraw and his deputies. Luke's breath caught. This wasn't just proof. It was a confession carved in ink and blood. Suddenly, the night exploded with light. Lanterns surrounded him. "Step away from the box, son," came MacGraw's voice, cold and steady. "The sheriff and his men had been watching him since sunset. You shouldn't have come poking where you don't belong." Luke stood his ground, chest heaving. "You killed his boy," he said, voice low but firm. "You destroyed a good man for your greed." MacGraw spat into the dirt. "That old fool had his chance. The frontier don't care about good men, only the ones strong enough to survive." Before the sheriff could draw his gun, a rifle cracked from the darkness. MacGraw's hat flew off as the bullet split the air beside him. "That's far enough," came the trembling voice of Silas Boone, emerging from the shadows. The old man's hands shook as he held the rifle, but his eyes burned with fury. "You took everything from me, MacGraw, my land, my family, my name. Tonight I take back my truth." MacGraw hesitated, one hand hovering over his pistol. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Luke stepped between them. "No," he said, "this ends here, with justice, not revenge." For a moment no one moved. Then the sound of galloping horses filled the night. Townsfolk, awakened by the gunshot, arrived with torches and rifles of their own. And when they saw their sheriff standing at gunpoint, the truth finally began to unravel. By dawn, MacGraw was in chains. The documents were turned over to the marshal, and word spread fast about the young rancher who bought a haunted ranch for $1 and uncovered the greatest crime the frontier had tried to forget. Silas stood on his porch as the sun rose, his face lit with a quiet peace. "You did good, son," he said to Luke. "You gave me back my name." Luke smiled. "You gave me something too, Mr. Boone. You taught me that a man's worth ain't measured by what he owns, but by the truth he stands for." The old man nodded, tears catching the light. "This land's yours now. Make it honest again." A week later, Silas Boone passed away in his sleep, the same night the first rain in years blessed the dry earth of his ranch. Luke buried him under the cottonwood tree. Beside the secrets he had unearthed, and carved into his tombstone, he died poor in gold, but rich in truth. When the wind blew across the plains, it carried whispers of his story, a reminder that even in the harshest land, justice finds its way home. If you're listening to this story, remember, the frontier may be gone, but its lessons still ride with us. Stand for what's right even when they laugh at you, because one day the truth will rise, just like that old man did. And if you loved this tale of courage and redemption, hit that subscribe button and join us for more forgotten stories of the Wild West, where every man's worth is tested in dust, blood, and honor.